To our dear Wellness Couch listeners, we are sending you all our love during these unprecedented times.
Now is the time to appreciate what community really is all about. And on the back of our wellness base camps in Geelong and Camden being postponed, we've decided to run a virtual experience that anyone can attend. It's called Crisis to Confidence.
Right now, the world faces 5 major challenges. The first one, fear and anxiety. So Kim Morrison will present on certainty and love.
The second one is social isolation. So Marcus Pearce is going to talk about how to build community during these difficult times.
The third is mental and emotional despair. So Brett Hill will talk about how to develop resilience.
The fourth is financial uncertainty. So Jason Witten will talk about creating financial security.
And the fifth is a challenged immunity. So Cindy O'Meara will share how to boost our immunity during these times.
Crisis to Confidence will be broadcast live on Saturday, April 4. And if you can't make it, you'll receive lifetime access.
To register and for all the details, go to thewellnessbasecamp.com. That's thewellnessbasecamp.com.
Thank you, Wellness Couch Tribe. We love you and send our virtual hugs and kisses.
Welcome to Nourishing the Mother, where inspired women talk about the journey of motherhood through the common thread of parenting, relationship, and sexuality as a path to consciousness. We ask, in what ways can we show up more fully, live more meaningfully, parent more wholly, and love more unconditionally? How can we mine the wisdom from the experiences of our lives and expand into those challenges? If you are here, you care about paving a path of conscious and intentional motherhood, connected with yourself and your gifts, and also illuminating your children in theirs, so we may raise more whole humans who can impact this world in a more humane way. And if you feel like giving a little back to this free content, please become a patron of the show and receive extra member benefits for less than a coffee a month. Or you can leave a review on iTunes and Facebook, all of which helps the podcast keep going and reach more mamas who need this type of tonic for the soul. Head on over to patreon.com/NTM podcast to find out more. We are Julie Tenner and Bridget Wood, and we are so grateful you're here.
Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood.
And I'm Julie Tenner, and today's podcast is holding on and letting go of attachment. Physical, metaphysical, spiritual, attachment.
All the layers.
So which comes because our next course in Soul Driven Motherhood is soulful, as in you are full of the deep bliss that it is to feel connected to your soul, and often we need to delve into the human layers around that. So soulful parenting begins on Monday in Soul Driven Motherhood if you would like to join us, and our first teaching will be on this, on attachment, labels, the limiting aspects. But for tonight's podcast, we are talking more personal story.
Yeah, we are.
Aren't we? So before we do that, I would love to remind you to jump onto nourishingthemother.com.au and sign up to join our tribe, where once every so often we'll send you out an email with what we've got going on, so you can pick and choose if you'd love to dive on in. So nourishingthemother.com.au. Sound like a car sales ad.
You did a little bit. I was waiting for a little, phone number jingle at the end or something.
It's terrible. Anyway, late at night. All right. So, attachment. Bridget, do your conscious thing. Take me there.
Well, it's interesting because I'm sitting here thinking about all of the kind of versions of myself in relationship to attachment parenting versus attachment as a secure attachment piece with children, and then attachment and what it means to be attached to something in the physical form.
Like a Buddhist practice. Like a Buddhist practice. As opposed to attachment versus non-attachment.
Yes. So I think about attachment parenting, and I think about like the continuum concept and evolutionary approaches to parenting, and the idea of us being close to our babies and meeting every need. And
God, I feel that so deeply. Like, that was absolutely 100% line and sinker. I was in for that.
And I still listen occasionally to, or, you know, immerse occasionally into some of the literature or, you know, theories around this. Like, I know that the Raised Good website and social media talks a lot about, you know, similar principles. And I love to play a little bit of devil's advocate with that and think about, like, yeah, it's beautiful, but how much are you needing that as much as you think that your child needs it? Because when we identify so deeply and so strongly with our child's need for us to be that, we can also lose ourselves in that and allow that to consume us, and that be what we attach to so strongly that we almost then morph with our child, and there's no, you know, we're dependent on that outcome, or we're dependent on that closeness just as much as our child's dependent on it. And then we see when we get to 2-ish, you know, the resistance in terms of the separation piece. And I wonder how much of that dance of seeking our attachment with our children is an unconscious desire to mend and heal our own broken attachment stories, our own misattunement as babies that we're not conscious of, but that we're so desperate to reparent in ourselves through our attachment with our child. And so then I think of attachment parenting as a concept, as a beautiful unconscious way often to try to go back and meet our baby self and give that baby self everything we didn't get. However, if we don't bring consciousness to it, then we can put our stuff on that child, right? And so I love to...
So they won't develop our voids.
Yeah.
But they'll still develop voids. They'll just be different.
They'll be different. They'll be different because they need them like we needed them. And that we're born, you know, and the very process of separation from our soul through being born in this human form is heartbreak, is loss, is losing ourselves to find ourselves again, as is the journey of life. And so those ruptures are you know, fundamental. But if we can't allow them in a way that is, I don't know, life-giving and encouraging and held for our children, and instead they're wrapped in trauma for us, we don't equip our children then with the resilience to meet and move through, you know, the separations that are going to fill their lives, right? So that's kind of where I wanted to start with in terms of how we frame this idea, because parenting is constantly that dance of like
holding on and letting go.
Oh, yes, right? Like I just want to eat you, and like I want to consume you, and you know, I just never want this moment with you to end. And that's our infatuation speaking. But then the inverse of that is also, I can't handle this anymore. I need some space. And that's our resentment, and that is just as functional and purposeful and important as those, you know, what we want to attach as the beautiful rose-coloured view of motherhood of that, you know, all-encompassing, yes, you know, I want to consume you kind of love, you know?
Oh, 100%. I do think, because I would love to dive into our own personal stories of the delusion of our own infatuation and attachment, and then probably the shattering of that delusion to embark on another delusion.
Yes. Because let's face it,
Yeah.
we all run our delusions, right?
Well, this is what I wanted to say before we start this, is that your delusions are purposeful.
Yeah.
Delusions, stories,
Fantasies, whatever
attachments to life being right, wrong, good, bad, this way, that way. All of it is an attachment, right? So I say it's a delusion because ultimately it is. Whatever we're picking is not a full universe.
And you only need to look at yourself 10 years ago and what you held staunchly as truth, or your belief, or how you lived your life and what lit you up, and see who you are now and realize, oh, I wouldn't probably choose that now.
Yeah, I wouldn't,
because
think
you're
the
not
same
that,
now.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because you broke the series of illusions and delusions and fantasies and growths,
Right.
to grow beyond needing that.
Right. So this is what I wanted to say was, whilst we're going to be a little bit tongue-in-cheek looking at our delusional self back then and the way that we saw the world, and perhaps you resonate with, that's how I see the world as well. So how could you possibly think that that's wrong or a different way to be, or, you know, all of the above. So if it hits any of those points for you, I just want you to just sit with the fact that we're always running a story. We're always running a delusion, and they are always purposeful. Our delusions are not, or stories, like insert whatever word you want to use, infatuations, attachments, are always on path. And I think karmic, like they're designed for us to feel the pain of, to experience a certain trajectory of life through that delusion, so that we come through the other side of it and it's shattered and we move into the next one. Like they all take us where we need to go to gain the wisdom and the lessons that we need to carry our soul forwards. Our delusions are purposeful, but they're delusions nonetheless. So that's kind of what I wanted to start with, is it's perfect and beautiful where you are. Like you and I, Bridget, would not be where we are in parenting had we not grown through and experienced and karmically fulfilled each and every one of our delusions along the way. We wouldn't be here. So the purpose of these conversations for us is just to talk about our wisdom and lived experience through the layers of those delusions, should you yourself find yourself on a path and you're looking for, where do I step next? But to know that wherever you find yourself is exactly on path, purposeful and important for exactly the karmic lesson you need right now to carry your soul forwards. So there's no point having a full-bodied heart and soul yearning for something because of the delusion that you're running, and then going, but the right thing to do would be to say no to that and move over here into what so-and-so said was the right way to do it.
Totally.
That will fracture you.
Yeah.
As opposed to wholeheartedly living through the experience you were designed to have to grow beyond it. So I just want to start with that.
I really think that's a beautiful way to frame it. Yeah. So thank you.
Stories.
I'm feeling right back. I've tried to take myself right back to my son's first year.
Can you take yourself back there though?
I don't know, but there's aspects of it, and maybe I'm choosing the ones that felt deeply purposeful and heart-filled. And I think back to who I was then, and the incredible intention and focus and vision with which I made the choices that I made, and how much they all felt like full-bodied yeses, and that the yearning with which I created myself as a mother then was so wholehearted that I wouldn't change that. I wouldn't. Like, I wouldn't change a thing, because what I got to learn through that was just profound. And so that's where I think, you know, we need to also trust the yearning of our heart and where that takes us in parenting, and trust that felt sense of like a flower opening. You know, I kind of look at, like, you know, meeting you on that path, and then all of the other things that I brought into my world then, and the experience that gave me, and also I think also the fractures that I had, like, you know, I, like you, hyper attached with my baby, lost connection with my husband, and then what I had to then do to then pivot to build relationship skills again. and the pain of that, but also the wisdom on the other side of that pain.
Totally.
It needed to be like that, you know?
Oh, I do. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And so I don't have a clear story, but I have a felt sense of tapping into that mother.
Yeah.
And still trusting her. And I hope that this is what I can evoke when I'm talking to my children when they're adults and they ask me, why'd you make that choice? You know, and I can go back to that place and tell them what it felt like to be a wholehearted yes in my body and to do what I felt was like the right thing to do for you and us and our family at that point in our life, and that I hope that you're also following what feels true for you. You know, like that's what I want to be able to tap in, not the like the harsh judgments or the you know how sometimes we can like almost be embarrassed or cringe at our earlier selves. Yeah. I hope that I can still bring somewhat of a level of, you know, reverence for that person, right? Because we're all evolving. Yeah.
Ain't that true?
The wheel keeps spinning. And so do we. Tell me about your stories.
I have a lot of trouble putting myself back at number one, to be honest with you. It feels
it's a long time ago.
So long ago now. It's kind of, it feels really hard. Yeah. My number one wasn't a full attachment baby. It was through the pain of not fitting in a mainstream system after having had a profound birth. But not equipping myself at all for parenting.
So that was the difference, because I'd done a shit ton of research on parenting even before I became a parent, whereas you kind of did.
I did nothing.
Yeah, you didn't do that part.
Didn't kind of occur to me that was going to be a problem. Which now I laugh at myself.
Yeah.
But honestly, back then I thought the biggest challenge was going to be having a physiologically normal childbirth.
Yeah.
In a system.
I didn't have that awareness. I just lucked in closely. But I didn't say that's the awareness I didn't realise to that degree.
But that was because I was in naturopathic college with largely mature age women who were studying back then. Because, you know, 25 years ago, the naturopathic industry is completely different to what it was now. And so was the way that we studied. And it was largely a mature age entrance course. So I was around all of these women who were already mothers and already had experiences.
What a great immersion.
You're pretty amazing, right? And so I knew enough to know that in order to have an experience like someone else, I just needed to break it down into what were their choices and then just replicate their choices. So that's what I did. I looked at these women that I was around and I looked at the ones I wanted to emulate, have the experience of, and went, tell me what you did. And then I just copied, cut and paste. And then, of course, that opened up each of the doors that opens up my own exploration. But nowhere would I have started that journey without speaking to those women. So I was so immersed in birth that I and breastfeeding, obviously, naturopathic. And I went to all of the breastfeeding stuff and, you know, was good with that. But baby settling and what you do and growth of infant, like nothing, knew nothing. And come from obviously a motherless mother, completely disconnected from any sense of community or support. No relationship with my mother-in-law, would probably more likely have told her to fuck off than please come closer. First one of my friends to have a baby. No one else had babies. Everyone else was still partying. We were living in St Kilda, which is an inner city suburb and is highly transient. So
you
no
were
one
like
stays.
On your own, right?
Totally on my own. So my attachment then was just to meet as much as I could possibly meet and give as much of myself as I could possibly give, because my mother, in the delusions I was running then, my mother never gave of herself above her own needs. So whatever it was going to be, I would sacrifice my body, my heart, my mind, my soul for my child before I even worried about me. Because I needed to. So, you know, I mean, it was a pretty tumultuous. I wasn't prepared for the lack of sleep. I wasn't prepared for how much of an identity shift, but more how much of a responsibility and commitment it was for me as the mother of a fully breastfed infant who I wanted to parent consciously and with attachment. So I definitely knew a lot about attachment parenting, but not specifically how I was going to do it.
Yeah.
And so the fractures, the anger that created as a resentment towards my partner towards Nick was massive.
Because he couldn't see you or understand?
Or just because he was fumbling. He didn't know and I didn't know. And
it's easier to like anything right. We want
he
someone
would just
to blame.
sleep. Well, and he would just sleep.
Yeah.
Because he's not wired like me. Like every sound, I was like awake and settling and whatever. And he could sleep through the crying and like legit just not hear it.
Which is enough to make you rageful.
Oh, rageful. I actually remember one night settling this baby and pacing backwards and forwards in front of the bed going, "You fucking serious?" Like, and ended up kicking him out of bed. Like literally, baby in my arms, kicked him so hard he flew out of bed. So
that's a one way to get him to help.
And he was like, "What the fuck?" You know? But I can remember the desperation of thinking my baby needed to sleep in a room and then having a stupid ass chair that I was supposed to sit up and feed in and just like falling asleep sitting up and like the whole thing was hideous in that regard.
Yeah. That was an absolute I reckon I had like PND at that point.
Yeah.
Until I gave myself permission to co-sleep.
Right. Me too. Right. But this is the beauty of the journey, right?
Yeah. And you have to go through that subordination to authority. Fuck, but I'm breaking the rules. Like, can I do this? But at the same time, I'm like slowly dying here, like trying to keep myself awake in the lounge room.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. So, and I remember hitting 6 weeks and ringing my home birthing midwife and being like, I just can't do this. I can't do this anymore. I'm at rock bottom here. And she was very matter-of-fact and old school, and she was like, well, when is he sleeping and when is he awake? And I'm like, well, I can't get him to settle and he won't go to sleep and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, every hour and a half. From the minute he wakes up, he should be back in bed asleep within an hour and a half, including a breastfeed. And our breastfeeds back then were taking like an hour and a half. And I was like, fuck, really? Because I didn't want to do Save Our Sleep or can't even think what the other iteration of that was back then. So I knew I wasn't doing that, and that even looking at the books made me have a want to vomit. But because I was carrying such a wound, I couldn't even go there. But I had nothing else to pad my journey with, like it was that or dying. So she was the first woman who gave me structure. And that was all I can remember that phone call. I can remember feeling shameful and like, I can't even fucking do that. Like, I don't know how you would think that he's going to sleep every hour and a half because this kid is like not sleeping. I can remember all of that. But she gave me enough structure that was the turning point. And I can still remember it. So I just all of a sudden, I didn't have it even enough capacity to be able to tune in or understand what his cues were. I was trying to remember listening to whoever that woman was who was able to tell you the different cry sounds and tones and notes and what they meant. I studied her program and I was like, I can't decode my own baby. Like that's how.
Cue further shame.
Right. Yeah. You're supposed to watch their tide signals. I'm like, I feel like I am now. I realize as an experienced mother, I really was missing all of them. But back then I couldn't even get it. I didn't get it. / also couldn't be told because I was a motherless mother who would not be told. So even if you were around that point in time, I probably wouldn't have listened to you because I was too much like, fuck you, fuck the system, fuck off.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That's who I was. That was my attachment. In order to survive, it has to be me because no one else is safe. So perfect delusion.
Because it was genius to get you to empower yourself, right? Because you then had to go, well, it's me, it's on me. And and you went on a crazy mission to get all the knowledge.
Yeah. So then I got into Elizabeth Pantley's No Cry Sleep Solution and found a local natural parenting playgroup who were all, extended breastfeeding, co-sleeping, family bed sharing, I can't even think, attachment aware parenting. The leader of our play group back then was one of the original aware parenting instructors. So that's where I learned originally from her, and that was like a fucking goldmine. So by the time my son was 8 months old, so between 6 weeks and 8 months old, I went on a massive learning curve. And by the time I remember him being 8 months and being like, I fucking got this shit nailed. I want another baby.
How amazing to do that level of like growth, right? In that time.
Because it felt so easy. I was bored. I don't think I really understood the depth of the spirituality and consciousness of parenting that I understand now, that allows you, I think, to have increasing levels of depth in a, ordinary moment.
It's funny, like I find it interesting when people say, oh, I was bored at home with a baby.
Yeah, that was me. But I think that's because your consciousness is just sitting too shallow. I don't think you understand the layers that are available to you in that moment or to them. I just don't think you can see it, feel it, read it, Anyway, so by the time he was 9 months old, I was pregnant with a second. So flash forward to her, I was going to undo all of the perceived trauma that I had created in my son with my first. So hello, another perfect delusion.
So you went the complete opposite way.
I went the complete opposite, and I was as full-blown hippie,
Earth
flower.
mother.
Oh, you name it, I did it. My breasts almost permanently lived outside of my shirt.
I've got bosom for every child. Come to my village.
Yes, exactly. Was into all of my knot tying on my, wraps. I fed her till she was 3. And, we were right. I was right into the Steiner and everything.
I often think about our husbands and the metamorphoses that they witness, right? Like, which is the feminine, isn't it? It's the evolving, ever changing.
And bless his cotton socks, he just came for the ride. I'm laughing because that's literally and metaphorically,
Do you reckon that he sometimes looked at you and thought, oh, okay, this is interesting?
Oh, but that's the purpose of the delusion too, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is it evolves ever increasing layers of consciousness and awareness, depth and intimacy if you allow it and you stay in and open enough to grow together. Because if you close off from that, then ultimately you don't.
Well, you go on different tracks, and so you lose your ability to relate.
So each and every step, it's been a new evolution of our relationship and learning how to be intimate with this new evolution, because it's a new person. I have new needs, new desires, new wants. How do I communicate those? What is in the way of those? Everything is beautiful. So full-blown hippie attachment to that. And then if you represented anything that was outside of that, I would physically recoil.
Watch out for judgmental Julie.
Right. No, really.
I know, and I say that because I totally was there too.
Really, we say that we as the fringe dwellers of society are judged by society.
Do just as much judging.
No one is judging harder.
Yeah. It's true.
Honestly, no one is judging harder. And by the time I got to number 3 and we were in our school community, mainstream school community, I realized what a fucking delusion that was, because the whole time I'm sitting here thinking they're judging me because I'm really judging them, so that judgment's coming back to me. They're just doing their thing. Don't give a shit what I'm doing. They don't care. Cool, you go do your thing. Yeah. That's cool. I'm good here.
But doesn't it get you to take yourself off a pedestal if you think you're doing it right? Because at that point, your child's now immersed in a soup, of other children who actually have turned out okay.
No, 100%. It was one of my biggest awakenings. One of my biggest. I was like, holy shit.
Turns out my way might not be the only way.
Yeah. Yeah, and just being really, really. Look, I say it's not the only way, but there's still, I do see differences in the relationship that I have with my children. I do still see, and in the skills of resilience that my children have. or their ability to be in a world, show up in a world, socially and emotionally handle themselves in a world. I do say now that I can see my children in high school is significantly different. I don't know that it was as apparent in primary school because there's a lot more just emotion in primary school. But by the time they've made, and I had equilibrated that. I don't have the, what's the like 20, not, I don't have the 20.
The 411.
That's it. I don't have the 411 on parenting. These women are all just fabulous. Look at them doing their thing. I've learned so much freedom from them, just the most magnificent experience. But then I have got through to high school and I'm like, no, holy shit. No, there's a difference.
I think we need a podcast on that because that to me is like,
is there? Yeah.
Well, because it's so far away for me. It still feels so far away, but I want to know that stuff.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, you don't parent the 14-year-old.
Yeah, you parent the 3 and the 5 and the 7. Yeah.
Right. Like, you know how that turns out because you're doing it now.
I often think that. I think whenever I get like nervous about what it's going to be like when like my 3-year-old is 14, it's like, I meet her here. I continue to meet her here.
Right, exactly.
Because it's just her in a different evolution.
Exactly. It's not the number of skills you have. It never is. You don't need a new skill. You just need a deeper practice of the one skill.
Capacity to hold and meet.
Be with. Learn deeper layers of, right? So anyway, back to attachments. So I was completely and totally and utterly attached with the fact that my children needed 24/7 contact with my skin and that any separation represented trauma and that trauma would be life-lasting and they would end up like me. So I was completely defined as an attachment personally to who I was as a left-of-centre human, fringe-dwelling, hippie, rainbow-loving, natural parenter. I definitely identified with all of the radical breastfeeders. I definitely identified with any study that I could shove in anybody's face that said this was the right way to sleep, to pattern a child's biology and neurochemistry and fight or flight responses. So the truth of it is, though, I needed those things to move beyond those things.
And, if we think about your own, because we concentrate so much on the child's development, right?
Yeah.
But alongside the child's development is our own developmental process.
Perfect.
So your nervous system is at the same time having to grow to meet what your child's needing from you. And so your development process required of you to hold those beliefs, to pattern your system in a way that could meet your children as they grew. And that was the perfect way that you needed to repattern to hold what you hold now.
100%.
So
1,000%.
It couldn't have been any other way.
No. But it was still a delusion.
Yeah.
I think that's okay to say. Like you, I did everything I wanted to do. Not with number one, I didn't because I didn't know. And I have the deepest compassion for myself not knowing. And the first child, I think your experience is a bit unique, but largely I think the first child.
I'm like a fucking researcher like nothing else. I'm unusual like that.
Yeah, I think it's an unusual experience. I think largely the first child experience is one of just horrific Band-Aid ripping off. Or if you happen to luck out on number one, usually it's number two that gets you.
Yeah.
So and I think that's harder, actually. The women that I've known who've had an easy first baby and then a horror second baby, which of course you have to understand the other half of the world.
My mum keeps saying to my brother, you wait till your second.
Yeah.
Because it's been too easy, right?
And it's brutal, like more brutal than what I witnessed myself go through at number one, and that was pretty brutal. But I learnt number one forced me, having the attachment that it had to be all me, forced me into the community and to grow beyond the self in order to do and be everything I wanted to do, because I couldn't do it on my own. That's the point of consciousness. You move from self-actualization into, oh, it's meant for someone else and it's bigger than me, and let's do this thing together. So, you know, all of those delusions and hard parts served. But there's still edges of the pain that I take myself back to, you know, when I see a crying baby in the shopping centre, or
you can tap yourself,
I don't know,
straight back
you know,
into
whatever.
it.
Yeah. And I just feel like, I think I was just really disconnected because that was the only way I could cope. So, but, you know, attachments, back on ball. So attachments number 3 were, if I meet every emotion and I don't do control patterns, that my child will be emotionally perfect.
That is like a pretty serious task to set for yourself.
Yeah, I was so willing. So willing. And so I get the child who is, in inverted commas, not emotionally normal and whose needs are extreme. Extreme needs. I still remember sitting at the blessing way of my 4th baby and one of my friends recounting the day that she met me, and it was at what do you call a clean up when you do it at school? You know, when
like a working bee.
Working bee. It was at a working bee, and she's like, oh my God. And I saw this woman and she had this little toddler who just followed her around, or just, it was like, Mom. And you'd go, yes, Lola.
I remember that story.
Mom. Yes, Lola. Mom. Yes, Lola. And she was like, all day. I was like, what the fuck?
I remember that story.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And I had never seen myself through that lens before, because for me, I just met it and met it and met it. And instead of offering solutions, let's cry it out. Let's do this, you know. But it was intense. So intense that I got to the point where I can't do this.
Yeah.
You know, so which of course is the perfect delusion to stretch me in all of the ways I needed to be stretched and take me to my next learning. So I was defining my own sense of identity by how much of my child's emotion I could hold and how many times I met that emotion and allowed that release during the day to find how successful I was.
Your day was.
Or just I was. Really, in my own little tally in my head that could prove my worth to my husband when he walked in the door. Today was brutal because I, you know, held space for 3 children 15,000 times. Go me.
Yeah. Where's my medal?
Well, it's the attachment to the identity, isn't it?
And, you know, then that's the difference, right? So if that's what your highest value is doing, is holding that space, that's what you're wanting to feel seen in versus, you know, look at this meal I cooked, or this house I cleaned, or this, you know, all of this great homework I helped my kid do. You know, whatever it is that you're kind of attaching your meaning to. For you, it was, look how much I held.
Yeah. So I guess the point of me highlighting this is so that you can see that we're always running an attachment, a story, a delusion, and it is always purposeful because it always gives you the learning that you need plus the wisdom that is seeking you as much as you're seeking it and leads you on the path to your next evolution, always. So, but they don't stay around forever. So don't get so sucked in to being so insular in your definition of who you are, would be my only advice as you navigate this.
Yeah. And you'll start to know when you're starting to shift, because the things that used to be triggering are not so much, and your ability to see a wider lens opens. But that can also be disconcerting because you realize that what you might have held onto so staunchly as your identity, the right way, how it should be, doesn't quite feel like that anymore. And there's almost a sense of needing to shed layers of self in order to call in who we are next. And that can be uncomfortable. And that's also why sometimes people can get so black and white about their thinking, because it's terrifying letting go of the things that you defined yourself as.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah,
So you can hold on to the thing that's not even serving you or anybody anymore because you're so attached to that's who you are.
Mm-hmm.
But the next evolution of you is calling you forward.
Mm.
It's about bringing some courage to meeting that.
It is. And I do think when we're talking about attachment and what we titled this module of holding on and letting go is just the beautiful pulse of the universe, right? Like pick any pulse point, pick your heartbeat, pick your breath. There's an in and there's an out. And that's what parenting should be too. Parenting should be a breath in and an exhale out. And parenting should be a way of handing over, not holding on. And all of those are stacked lessons. So, I mean, we are obviously going to dive more into that on Monday.
Of course.
When I look at all of these attachments, I always think, okay, so I'm looking for the inhale and I'm looking for the equalizing exhale. And if it's missing, there's only so much tension your body can hold. You can't just keep inhaling for the rest of your life.
And also your children will show you, right? Because they're so beautifully rhythmic in the way that they love to move through their day. And I think about, like, as you're saying that, I'm thinking about that Steiner approach of the in-breath and the out-breath, right? And that how much a rhythm that notices or considers that helps a child feel held. And we can also hold ourselves in that too, in that trust, but also that structure that we can give ourselves and give them.
So I really hope that our story sharing gave you something today to consider, to ponder, and possibly just to take with you as you enter your next delusion. Wholeheartedly and lovingly.
Wholeheartedly, that's right.
And we will enter ours with you.
Yes.
Like no
one's immune from it, right?
No.
Like it's everyone.
Everyone, all of the time, and it's always purposeful. But that's why you've got to have a sense of humour and non-attachment to it, because it will leave you. The thing that you think is so important right now will die. Like, we're all dying from the moment we're born. And so is everything. Everything is impermanent.
Yeah.
Nothing is as permanent as we want to make it.
And that's the practice too, to remember that.
Totally. And if you were really interested in diving into more of the spiritual teachings of the foundation of soul-driven parenting that we're talking about, so soulful parenting will be the place for you to find that. And you can check out nourishingthemother.com.au, Nourishing the Mother on socials or Instagram, and you will find it within Soul Driven Motherhood.
And to connect with you, Jules,
is thepleasurenutritionist.com, and you, Bridge,
Suburban.Sandcastles.com. Remember to nourish the woman, to rock the family.
And we'll see you next week when we continue to peel back the layers on your mothering journey. And if you want to support Nourishing the Mother and all the late nights, the early mornings, the blood, sweat and tears we pour into our art, then please go to patreon.com/NTM podcast and become our patron. As a patron, you're helping all of the cost of operating this podcast, the hosting, the editing, the transcription, helping all of that be completely covered, and joining a community who are all about honouring our journeys and continuing to open. The more support we have, the longer we can last. So become a patron. We'd love to have you. Go to patreon.com/NTM podcast. We literally couldn't do this without you. Thank you so much for listening, and please share this podcast with anyone you think it would be medicine for.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives.
Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.